Hey everybody, the Real Behemoth here, back in with another video for Heroes of History. Today we are going to be going over a treasure hunt tier list. So I've created this tier list to try and assist some people in making teams, but I absolutely want to start off with a disclaimer. Just because somebody is placed in any tier, S, A, B, C, or D, does not mean they have zero or no use. Placing heroes in synergistic teams, regardless of the hero you are using, is always going to be viable. So this game, there's so many different combinations. There are so many different routes you can go. So this is just my own opinion, because it is an opinion, of where some of these heroes should be placed. Given kind of some of the heroes that I have, given some of the heroes that I'm missing, things of that nature. So just because somebody is in B does not mean that you should prioritize an A over a B, because you may have somebody in what I would consider B tier that can absolutely be viable with somebody he is synergistic with, right? So just keep that in mind as this video goes forward. So in D tier, we've got Dartigan, we got Cyrus the Great, Inanna, Ada, some of the 2-stars, really almost all the 2-stars. So the reason I placed, the top few in there would be Dart, Cyrus. Those are going to be the ones that have potential to move up. So Dart, he does, single target damage. He does his bleed. He's okay. And in Tesla is really going to be where he does a little bit better, but across the board, he is very underwhelming and he dies ridiculously quickly. So really, you're going to primarily use him for your boss fights, but there are significantly better options when choosing a single target damage dealer for your boss fights. Cyrus, very underwhelming damage. Can kind of be actually, a little bit tanky for a 3-star, but he does also have some use with relics now in the game. So he has some pretty good synergy with one of the relics, as I believe he provides a buff to your team, right? So make sure you check that out if you haven't seen him before, but he has very little to no use in my personal opinion. In C tier, we have Spartacus, we have Leif, Leonidas, Oracle, Musashi, a couple of other 3-stars. Well, not a couple other, but Marco Polo, Quantumok, Naya, and Chiome. So Spartacus, he does do decent damage, but I look at him as more of a tank, and he just does not tank very well. And again, similar to Dart, there are other damage dealers, that are single target that just would be a little bit better for your boss fights in Treasure Hunt. Leif is an interesting one. So I haven't used him much. I don't know if he's still bugged or not. I think that's part of the reason I put him here in C tier. If he's not bugged, he's definitely B tier. But he'd be primarily used against those hero fights as well. Does no damage, but does end up debuffing and essentially throws a taunt on an enemy unit, which can be positive, but can also really hurt your team as well. So that's the reason he's there. Leonidas, just a pretty basic AoE, stomp stun. He actually can do decent damage. He's an easy one to level, 3-star, easy to max, only costs 1 folio to max. So he's really more of a placeholder until you get somebody better, in my personal opinion. Oracle, debuffer, debuffer/buffer, whatever you really, look at her like. But I think that there are better support units that you can use for Treasure Hunt specifically. Now moving over to the 2-stars, you have Temok, Naya, and Chiome. Chiome is really solid for, the earlier Treasure Hunt fights. When you're looking for a filler, she's fantastic. I still use her in my purple Tesla, and I've beat 14. So she's actually still usable. So if there's a 2-star to max, I'd recommend you maxing her as well if you have the ability to do so. Temok, he's a little bit of a healer, has very minimal heals, and so heals are obviously very useful in Treasure Hunt. That's the only reason he's up there in C compared to some of the other 2 stars. And then Naya can probably move up to B, but I just find her heals somewhat underwhelming for end game type Treasure Hunt. But she's probably more so B tier than C tier. All right, moving on to B tier. We have Wallace. So Wallace, he's supposed to be tanky. His skill revolves around tankiness. Mine is ability level 33, level 80, awaken 3. He still just dies for me. So I can't keep him alive long enough. He still dies. And I'm just waiting for him to get good. So I'm hoping that once his ability is maxed, or that level 36 plus, when he gets that little plus addition to his skill or ability, that he becomes a little bit better. But I have yet to see that. So in terms of comparing him to the other tanks, I feel like he falls in B tier. Achilles, looking at this, I would probably put him and switch him back to A tier. With Lancelot, that's where I would put him. So, disregard the B tier on him, but he's going to fall more under A tier. He does very similar things to Lancelot. He's fast. I think that he's just slightly less tanky than Lancelot, in my opinion. And so that was, my original rationale is to put him in B tier, but I would now switch him to A. Sun Tzu, a little bit underwhelming. He does start getting better at ability level 20. And so you'll start noticing a little bit of a difference in his use case. But a lot of other heroes are being focused on over Sun Tzu, unless you get him pretty early, into your roster addition for 5 stars. And so that's kind of the rationale behind that. So he's not really a priority when focusing ability points. But he starts getting a little better. He's not very tanky. He's very squishy. He's kind of a support unit. So he's kind of an odd case. So that's part of the reason he's in B tier. For Einstein, he's just nothing works for him. He's all he really is a Van Gogh, and honestly, not really even a great Van Gogh. Very underwhelming damage. Initially, he was bugged. His movement speed, I don't even know if they still have that on his ability, but it doesn't work. So that's the reason he's there. Da Vinci, there's definitely a use case for him to move up to A, along with Einstein, honestly, and Achilles. But Da Vinci's here. He's still bugged. They still have about 2-ish bugs to work through. But with relics and now the Torch of Prometheus, he can probably move to A. But he's pretty underwhelming until later ability levels. And a lot of people aren't going to focus him because if you're comparing, focusing his ability compared to somebody like, I don't know, another unit, his is just going to fall lower on the priority list. Attila, a little bit tanky, self-healer, not too shabby. Him and Grant are both in here just because they aren't as tanky as obviously the tanks, and that's the category they would fall under. They'd fall under that off-tank category, and so using them alongside your main tanks is definitely their use case for Treasure Hunt, but just nothing to write home about for them. Louis and his shield. He's definitely better on later ability levels, same as most of these heroes that are on B tier. And that's kind of the main differences is, those in A tier versus B tier. You really need the B tiers to be a little bit later on in ability levels for them to start doing work that people in A tier can probably do almost from the jump. And so that's a lot of the use case. So Bessie, B tier, only going to really be used against hero levels and boss fights, but very underwhelming. Mine's level 80, Awaken 1, ability I think 15. She just doesn't do too much. Van Helsing, you really need Dracula to see him shine. That pair, that duo, that combo is really going to be useful, especially in boss fights. But he does do pretty decent damage. Artemisia, I'll skip around here, but Artemisia, really, really solid when paired with Edison, actually. Edison doesn't fully kill the minions a lot of the times, and so you'll find her use to be finishing off the minions he does not finish. Charlemagne, tank, along with Herman, tank, it just not tanky enough. Very decent, very good early on for Treasure Hunt, but I feel like that they could be doing a little bit more. And comparing them to some of the other tanks later on, and some of the other tanks in the higher tiers, they're just a little underwhelming. Now let's move on to the 2 stars here. So the 2 stars, Hassan Pasha and Eric the Red. There's a reason why they're in B tier, and some of the other 2 stars are in C and D tier. These 2 are treasure hunt kings, and I cannot say this enough. I mean, I'd put them in S tier, but I mean, literally everyone would, come after me. So Hassan, he's another taunt unit. We do not have enough taunt units in the game to be selective. He's easily maxable. Same with Eric the Red. They're easily maxable. They take 0 folios. Their placements, right? They're easy fillers, is what I would call, heroes that you can throw into a TH team and don't even have to think about it. They're really easy fillers. So Hassan, being another taunt tank, he's really going to help with somebody like a Medusa or somebody like a Means, or somebody who really just needs that grouping in order to just kill them all, right? I call him my suicide tank. So Hassan is my suicide tank. I expect him to die every single fight. But he gets you through that first and second wave easily. So definitely recommend using him as a filler if you just need another taunt, another grouper. Eric the Red, insane buffer. So he buffs, if you throw him in your back middle line spot, he's going to buff your whole team, and it's an additional 50% attack. So really solid buffer, costs you nothing to build and max. Super, super solid unit. Now, moving on to A tier. We've got Napoleon. Napoleon is very good. So everyone hates on Napoleon. I do not understand it. He's one of my favorite heroes in the game. Napoleon not only dishes damage, not only tanks, but he also buffs your team and debuffs your enemies. There's genuinely nothing else you can ask for in any hero in the game. To hit all 4 out of 4 things that you want out of a hero, that's Napoleon. That's the reason he's an A tier. The only reason he's not an S is because you really need his Awaken 2 in order for him to be an S tier. His Awaken 2 is Evasion. He's the only one in the game that has it. And his Evasion Awaken is going to be insane with the Evasion Relic. Ragnar. Ragnar jumps, hops around, taunts, does his thing. I would recommend you have another tank or an off tank alongside him just for, the few minions or heroes that don't get taunted by him. But he's very fun to use and very fun to have paired with Lagartha. So definitely recommend that. Vlad, also another tank. So most of the tanky folks are going to be in A tier. The ones that can really tank or have that additional use case. So the ones that I have, so if you compare them to William Wallace, for example, this is the reason why William Wallace is still in B tier. He has nothing special about his ability. He just tanks, and he's not great at it. Where if you look at Napoleon, he buffs and debuffs, also does damage. Ragnar taunts. Vlad, he stays up with with his ability if you have him paired with another bleed user. Hercules in there as well. Hercules has his stun. Wallace doesn't have any of that. So that's what separated them from A versus B. Now, Joan of Arc, very, very great unit. The only issue is I don't have her in S because you really need her ability level 20 plus. That's when she starts to shine. Mine is ability level 36 now, and she does work for me. She almost one-shots some of these minion waves at Master 2 in Treasure Hunt. Mulan, amazing AoE damage dealer, has a burn, and can tank as well. So she's pretty useful when it comes to Treasure Hunt and the minion waves. Abe Lincoln, that extra little bit of invincibility and support you guys need in order to get those heals or in order to get your damage dealers to pop off and clear the wave, he can provide that. But aside from that ability and his long cooldown, it's tough to throw him an S. So he's an A for me. Ramses, Queen Elizabeth, Confucius, Margaret, all amazing buffers. Just not amazing enough to throw an S, but they're critical for Treasure Hunt. You want a buffer or debuffer in every single one of your Treasure Hunt teams if you have the ability to do so. So definitely recommend that you're using them, especially alongside relics. If they increase your crit chance, having them paired with the Aquila is going to be awesome. Robin Hood, Achilles, Lagertha, Jane are really going to be primarily boss fight. Only boss fight heroes. They're going to be your big single target damage dealers. They need some sort of something against minions in order for me to put them in S. So Beethoven, amazing stun. I would absolutely recommend you guys have some sort of crowd control in your teams, a stun. And he's critical. He's amazing. So having him paired up with Hassan Pasha, for example, to keep Hassan alive, have Beethoven pop off, stun the whole group, and then have somebody completely wipe it out, an AoE damage dealer or two, they can do that. And then you have Hassan alive for the next round or next wave. Plato, good debuffer, slightly better than Karl Marx. I've changed my mind on that. Even though Karl Marx has a stronger buff, Plato, debuffs the whole enemy squad. So minions, heroes, etc. He's going to be awesome. Van Gogh and Pythagoras, I've got them both in A tier. Not quite strong enough for S, but very solid, especially with another taunt. If you have taunt, and even without it, if you have them paired together and you don't have a taunt user alongside them, they can actually do some pretty solid work together. They have a very synergistic ability. In S tier, we have Ben Franklin. He's able to be used against both mobs and against heroes. Very, very solid unit. I can't speak enough on this. A lot of people are really, I've said from the start, he's a top 3 hero in the game. He really is. He's a top 3 hero. Debuffing your enemy units is absolutely critical. I personally have him on my team 3, or is what I like to call my mini boss team, because in Master 2 Treasure Hunt, you'll start seeing mini boss fights on the bonus stage. And so having him there to play against the minions the entire time and then get ready for the heroes, absolutely amazing. Cleopatra, obviously, nothing needs to be said about her. She's very clearly S tier. Heroes, mobs, doesn't matter. She's got it. Washington can be very tanky with your team. If you can keep him alive long enough and pair him with a healer, an AoE healer, like Lily or Hatshepsut, your team just can't die after he pops his ability off. Very, very solid hero. Very good tank. Very nice to have in one of your Treasure Hunt teams. Caesar, same thing. Heroes, mobs, doesn't matter. Taunt hero, tankiness, he's got everything. Marie is one of the best AoE damage dealers in the game and in Treasure Hunt. She's actually good against heroes. She's actually good against mobs. Not much needs to be said about her. Her damage gets stronger and stronger as you get her ability up. I definitely recommend you get her ability up so you can kind of start seeing those differences as well. She starts off slightly underwhelming and then she just kind of goes ham. Medusa, same thing. Very solid. She has her stun. Her poison is incredibly strong. At ability level 40, her range increases. She just gets better and better. Pairing her with a taunt like I have in my team, I actually pair her with, I have a double crowd control team. I pair her with Auto, Hercules, and then I've got my Medusa. So Auto pops, Medusa clears full first wave. We go to the next wave. I've got Auto, and then Hercules pops, waits for Medusa, and then she pops, and it's a clear. Amelia, we don't even need to talk about her. She's insane. You're gonna see all the healers, all the main healers are gonna be in S tier, very clear. Kin, the best overall unit in the game. His utility, his kit, everything about him. If you're not using him, I don't even know what you're doing. If anybody has a question of, oh, do I level Kin or this person? Always Kin. Max him out, max his ability, do everything you can to get him up. Very, very amazing. He's also used for heals too, so I would recommend throwing him on a team that does not already have a healer, so that you make sure your healers are spread out. Means insane, especially after his ability is maxed. After his ability is maxed, not only does he do crazy damage, not only does he have his ability pop off in less than a second or a second and a half, he has an attack buff for your team. So you're going to see an attack buff with him, and your whole team's going to pop off. So amazing. Along with the healers, along with some of the other heroes, we've got King Minos and Auto. Very easy and very clear to understand why they're in S tier. They're taunt, they're tanks, very solid heroes. Now, three of the ones that are probably going to surprise some people would be Boudica, Edison, and Tomo. So let's talk about Edison. Edison, yes, he dies quickly. We get it. He dies fast. He's very squishy. Pair him up with Minos, where Edison pops off if you have a max awaken. Have him max awaken. He pops off less than a second. Minos shortly after. Boom. He's saved. I would recommend Edison to be slightly over-leveled compared to most of your other heroes. If he is dying, he's just not leveled high enough, in my opinion. You need him just high enough leveled in order for your taunt hero to pop off, and then he's good. Pair him up with Hot Ship Soot, he pops off significantly more often as well. Tomo does pretty crazy damage. She is also squishy, but she does very solid damage. Again, pair her up with a taunt, or actually you can pair her up with a buffer so she one-shots. That's another route that you can go. Boudica. The reason I wanted to shock everybody with Boudica in S tier is because of her stun. So when you're versing boss fights, so she's just going to be used in boss fights, but when you're versing in boss fights, her stun and her crit go crazy. She's one-shotting, for me in Master 2 Treasure Hunt right now, she's one-shotting some of these backline heroes with when she crits, and it goes crazy. The other portion of it is if you're versing somebody like a Cleopatra or a Jane, if it's just if their mind control is focused on one hero, Boudica throws her ability, hits her stun, the mind control does nothing. The mind control effect essentially stops until they're unstunned. So definitely recommend that you use her in your boss fights. With her stun, it just allows your team enough to push through whatever minions are left and go right to the heroes. So very solid unit. I hope you guys enjoyed this tier list. Please let me know what changes you would make, if any. I'm imagining there will be a lot of complaints and a lot of suggestions for heroes to be moved. Very curious to hear what your thoughts are and why. Please leave a like and subscribe this video. Catch you in the next one.